We'll call the meeting to order. Flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first agenda item is public comment. We have Attorney Platt from the Sunrise Water Authority. Wants to make a statement.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Ernie Platt, Board Chair of Sunrise Water Authority. I'm here this evening because there have been some statements made recently and or published that are just flat out not correct, and some of them do involve Sunrise Water. So I felt it important to be here and set the record straight, if I may. I've given you a copy of some information. And as you all know, Sunrise Water and Clackamas River Water have been working on a potential intergovernmental agreement that will allow the two agencies to join some resources in meeting future common needs that range from water supply issues to office operational issues. The goal has been to target similar functions performed by each agency and assess a means of reducing the overall cost of operation and improving the system-wide efficiency of the combined format. Unfortunately, members of the CRW board have made repeated false and derogatory statements in public regarding the intent of this intergovernmental agreement and the financial status of Sunrise. In particular, public statements from members of your board have indicated that the physical assets of CRW, such as the treatment plant and its waterways, are targeted under this agreement for transfer to a new commission, and that debt service of Sunrise would somehow potentially be shared by CRW ratepayers. These statements are misleading and absolutely false. The fact of the matter is, the proposed agreement strictly prohibits such a transfer of assets into the proposed new commission from either agency without formal approval of their respective full boards. Moreover, the same CRW commissioners have perpetuated these false statements and have offered the opportunity to present alternative language to these operation and efficiency ideas, but yet have failed to do so, propose any such alternative language or plan. Instead, their only public comment has been to present the false and misleading representations of the actual discussions that have been shared between the two agencies to reduce the cost and improve the efficiency. Members of the CRW board have also publicly characterized Sunrise as debt-ridden. Fact is, Sunrise did take on substantial debt in 2004 and 2005 to allow for a major system expansion to accommodate growth in Happy Valley. The repayment plan for that debt was to rely on new connection charges based on aggressive predictions for new growth within City Happy Valley. By 2008, that growth had slowed substantially, and Sunrise was forced to use a substantial portion of general fund revenue, comes from rates, to service the annual debt on these payments. Recognize the need to restore operational support and to begin fund depreciation of existing assets. Sunrise passed an important rate increase in 2011. Today, Sunrise has restored its operations to full staff, is accumulating about $1.5 million per year in reserves, placing it well above the minimum financial requirements to service that bond debt. Moreover, the number of new connections has risen substantially over the past 18 months, and as of the last payment we made on the bonds, it was made entirely from the funds that come from connections. We are no longer using general fund money to make those bond payments. In fact, all cities and special districts that make periodic improvements to their infrastructure routinely rely on debt as a means for financing all or even a portion of the related costs, including CRW, by the way. The financial integrity of the agency is not based solely on the existence or lack of debt, rather its ability to pay for its operation and infrastructure in a prudent manner. The actual facts here are that Sunrise's cash reserves and its ability to repay its debt are increasing, and CRW's cash reserves are decreasing. Their total unfunded liability for repair and replacement of its aging infrastructure far exceeds that of Sunrise. CRW has yet to undertake a needed substantial rate increase to meet its present future capital needs that will continue to see a reduction in cash reserves without that change. But more importantly, this all has nothing to do with Sunrise or its desire to seek ways to reduce operating costs and improve efficiencies. In short, continued misrepresentations by certain members of the CRW board regarding Sunrise are not only untrue, but also display a clear lack of understanding of the facts at hand and the depth of leadership needed to solve these difficult problems that face both of our agencies. A single-purpose public agency that conducts similar operational functions in adjoining territories, it only seems logical that there are numerous opportunities for the two to share the use of specialized labor, equipment, facilities, and yet preserve the financial responsibility of each agency. Regardless of the proper governance of each agency relies on the integrity of their respective boards and commissioners and the public statements made by those members. Sunrise is taking this opportunity to set the record straight regarding its intent to seek a collaborative opportunity with CRW and others to make effective use of shared resources and to seek the greatest benefit to the communities we serve. We ask that all facts be presented in a fair and responsible manner, that good governance rise above false statements and misrepresentation. We look forward to a continued working relationship with Clackamas this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. President Sloan, if I may, I'd like to apologize for some of the misstatements that have been made for all of them. And on my behalf, and possibly some of the other members of the board, I'd like to apologize for those misstatements. And hopefully we can start now and get a good working relationship started.
Thank you, Commissioner. Understood. Thank you.
We have,
Yes, I believe the comments were presented, at least in part, directed at me. I appreciate the opportunity to respond as Mr. Fernandez. First of all, I want to make sure that everyone, including Mr. Clapp, understands that I do believe that Sunrise Water Authority enjoys excellent management. The work that has been done there by Mr. Hawthorne and his board in reversing and improving the financial situation of Sunrise is admirable in the extreme. Second, I would just say that Sunrise itself does not have significant infrastructure, as CRW does have. Sunrise has delayed for at least 3 years, I believe 4 now, fulfilling its obligation to build out the 4th bay in the North Clackamas County Water Commission water treatment plant. So I don't think that the two organizations are analogous in that sense. Relative to the agreement that was referenced, we had 2 executive sessions. I expressed my concerns in great detail. The 2 attorneys who were drafting the form, I'll wait till we aren't squealing here. The 2 attorneys who were drafting the form in response to those expressed concerns, only made cosmetic changes, no substantive changes. And the fact is that as it is structured at present, it is structured to allow the transfer of any and all assets into the commission. And I am not, and I've read that thing multiple times. I am not aware of having made any false statements whatsoever about the content of that proposed document. I am not in any way impugning Sunrise Water Authority. I believe that since CRW is the possessor of the water treatment plant, the water rights, laboratory, etc., that it is CRW who would be not doing well by its ratepayers. I think Sunrise would be doing extremely well by Sunrise's ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two other, no, more than two. Just wants to comment at the public hearing.
So,
Yes,
is it okay if I go after Commissioner Hallmark?
sure.
Just briefly, the attention needs to be brought to page 2 of Mr. Platt's letter. Clearly states the ability to take and transfer assets of CRW to the new commission. Very clear there in this, is the second sentence on page 2. Very clear. That's all.
Mr. Chairman.
Any public comments? Laney Rowland, I think, in it, wants to speak.
I'm sorry.
Change your name, huh?
I did.
You can come up too, Barbie. You can
He said you can come up too.
I'm sorry, could we get your name again?
Oh, I'm Laney Rowland, and I'm a small business owner. I'm also looking to be a resident in this district, and I also have my business in this district. So I'm kind of concerned about all the signs that are going on. So I've done my research by going online and looking at some of the past agendas and the meetings and whatnot. And I understand that there were actually 2 petitions for recall for Commissioner Holloway and Commissioner Sterling. And I'm just curious, I'd like to know how this is affecting both personally and professionally the residents in the area, and what happens to the allegations that are being made against Sunrise and Clackamas River if and when the recall is successful. I'd like to know where my business and my residents fits into what's happening in this room.
Go ahead, Ken.
Well, obviously, it's the decision of the voters as to whether or not someone is recalled from this board. The second issue is that the members who are appointed to this board will have to run for election in May for those very seats. And that will be, again, the decision of the voters, as it should be. I think I speak, well, I know I speak for myself and possibly others on the board. Our intention is essentially what the philosophy of the district has been for a long time. We want to deliver clean water to all of our customers at a reasonable rate. We believe that we are reasonably competitive with other areas. We believe we are 3rd from the lowest in our current rate structure, possibly 4th from the lowest of any that have a water treatment plant. So we see ourselves as reasonably competitive. What we do know, based on our efforts to find out as much as possible about the district in a short period of time, is that there are a number of infrastructure needs throughout the district that need to be addressed. And we will have to look at how we will fund those kinds of infrastructure needs so that we do not leave a mess for the people who come after us. Sometimes people want a commitment, and I'll put this on the table for myself. Sometimes people want a commitment that says that I will not raise rates. I will not make that statement. I don't believe that that's a responsible thing to say. I think that you have to look at the needs of the infrastructure as well as the needs of the community and make sure that you do not leave a mess behind you just so you can say, I never raised rates. I think that's politically irresponsible.
How does all of what's going on with the recall, how is that going to affect the rates going forward? I mean, obviously, there's going to need to be some type of rate increase going on. But with the cost of the special election, for the recall, the time from, people spend their own energy to, canvass the area, how does that instill confidence in us as a potential ratepayer that we're coming into an appropriate commission or situation?
The district finds itself in a position of having to defend when allegations are made, and that unfortunately costs money. So you might want to direct that question to the people who are appealing rulings that strike me as simply common sense, and that is that one should be able to count to 3 before one holds a meeting. To have to litigate something of that nature, to me, strikes me as patently foolish and a waste of your money. But unfortunately, we're forced to defend.
Does that have to do with the November, I believe it was a November meeting where it was just the 2 commissioners that called it?
That's correct.
And that was not a legal meeting, is that correct?
That's in front of the Supreme Court. That's yet to be determined.
According to the court currently,
No,
that is
no.
the case.
Okay,
No, this
that's
commissioner
okay.
is completely wrong.
Excuse me.
Dr. Soa, can you kind of help us decide which is fact and which is fiction?
The circuit court in Clackamas County has ruled that that was an illegal meeting. That has been appealed. And the request for a stay of that motion has been denied. So that won't be decided until the Supreme Court takes up it finally. So
And
we're in a real transition period right now. We have the recall, and we have 3 commissioners that are going to be filing for election between now and May. So,
and that leads me to the second half of my question. When the recall is successful, what happens to that Supreme Court motion?
That's out of our hands.
that's not our board action. That's a private person action. And if the recall is successful, then the 4 remaining board members will appoint another person to take that spot.
And will then the cost of the recall and all of the illegal motion or meeting, will that then find a place to have to raise the rates for potential residents and business people to cover those costs?
We're now doing a rate study to find out exactly what the rate should be. And the $17,000 that we'll have to pay to the county elections will be taken into consideration when we talk about rates or not rates.
So would that mean that there could potentially be a large rate increase compared to right now if that shows, or would it be incremental? I need to think of my own business's budget, in planning if I want to have a 20% rate increase, and that's going to obviously affect my bottom line.
Well, the commission has decided that we would try to keep our attorney fees down. Hopefully that will offset some of the things that might come up. So
Okay.
we'll have a budget committee that'll be starting, I think, next month, and we'll be setting the budget for the next year. So if you're concerned about the rates, you should come to the budget committee and express your opinion.
Chair, so,
I appreciate that, thank you.
Chair, so if I may. First of all, relative to canvassing for recall signatures, 92% of the signatures that were collected by paid collectors.
That's
Yes,
not true.
it's
I
true.
don't believe that to be
Well,
true.
It is true. It's on the forms. I never say anything I can't document.
Can you
And-
provide that documentation?
I'll be happy to.
I'd like to see
I'll
that.
give me your email address and I will email you the forms.
I'd be happy to do that.
So 92%, so if I may continue, 92% were collected by paid collectors. Another roughly 5% were collected by CRW employees. Some of them were shown as paid, some as unpaid, but the union collections were, the 92% were paid. Just for your understanding, CRW board policy allows two commissioners to call a special meeting. The date you're referring to is October the 30th. Two commissioners, Commissioner Sterling and myself, did call a meeting. The question of ORS 198.320, which says that a majority of the remainder of the commissioners and CRW's own lawyer to the Supreme Court just acknowledged, that I have that with me, that there were only 3 commissioners at that point. So I do believe that the actions we took were within the construct of the law. The Supreme Court, yes, did deny the emergency motion for stay. However, rather than granting the normal 28 days to one side and another 28 days to the other side, they fast-tracked it to a 10-day response. And in that response, and this is really important, one, CRW was the attorney that was retained by Commissioners Saul Humberston and Kalani, acknowledged that contrary to the statement former Commissioner Kemper made under penalty of perjury in the circuit court trial, that Commissioner Kehoe was not on this board at that time. Second, the attorney for the county of Clackamas has stated twice in his response to the Supreme Court that Clackamas County only had the right to make appointments to complete a quorum. So if the Supreme Court decides that the action of Commissioner Sterling and myself was not valid for that purpose, according to the response of Clackamas County to the Supreme Court, the court should acknowledge the second portion of the mandamus, which is that only Clackamas County's appointment of Commissioner Soa was legal, or was in compliance with ORS 198.320. So there's been a lot of misinformation out there, and I'm happy to have a chance to correct it. And one other thing that's important to know, a year ago, this board, which at that time did not have a surgeon on, voted for a 2-year rate increase. So, unbeknownst to me, I was snookered. I thought it was 14.25% last year. Instead, they loaded 76% onto the base rate. And this year, right now, and it hasn't been announced in any of the bills because it happened, I guess, a year ago, there will be another 14.5% increase across the board. So the base rates are going up and the consumption rates are going up, and they're going up. Last year, businesses only got hit for 5%. This year, they'll get hit for 14.25%. So regardless of anything, that unless there is a majority on this board that will roll that back, you are going to get hit for a rate increase, period.
So is that based on, what is that based on? I mean, to me, that sounds like you don't want my business. You know, if it's
No,
going to be that
I
high.
don't
So how do we justify that rate increase?
I didn't want that rate increase.
But how can the business be performed without an increase?
So, and I voted for it thinking it was 14.5%. It wasn't, it was 76 on the base rate. And I didn't know that until after the fact, and tried to talk the board into reversing it, and was unable to do so. So, you know, I don't know what else to tell you, but at least I hope I've been able to give you some misinformation.
Let's hear what Mr. Sherman has to say.
Well, the thing that struck me the most is that you're a businesswoman, you're concerned about your rates, but you allowed the conversation to go completely off kilter.
I realize that's what she was doing.
If you had taken and come and participated as a ratepayer and as a future business owner in the budget meetings, and if you talked to your friends at the Clackamas County Business Association that you belong to come, you would have understood as to what happened with the majority last year to the rates.
Okay, why are
I mean,
you
I admit
attacking
I
me?
was snookered.
Why are you attacking me?
I'm not. I'm trying to get you to understand that your rates have already been raised, and there's nothing that this board is going to do about those
Okay, but
rates.
there's no reason to raise your voice.
Well, you know, I have a feeling that you're not listening.
I am listening, I'm trying to understand. I'm hearing so many different things that are going across this commission, and I'm understanding more and more as I hear Commissioner Holloway speak why the recall is in effect. And as far as I'm concerned, I almost would rather go with Oak Lodge or Sunrise directly rather than come into someplace that's paying 76% or snookered into 14.6%.
It's divided to 76.
The information isn't even consistent. So I think as far as I'm concerned,
You're finding the same thing out. You're absolutely correct.
I agree with you 100%.
Yes, so do I.
I would like to thank you for your time. Is there anything else that you could add to this?
No, the new rate for this year will go in effect July 1st.
May 1st.
May 1st, and that will be done after we've had the rate study completed. So we know whether we can cancel that new rate or whether we need to keep it. So things that happen between now and then are important to you and all other ratepayers.
Okay, and when is the next budget committee meeting?
Ms. Bright can tell you.
Next
We're
month?
going to have a scheduled discussion about that.
Okay. All right, well, I thank you for your time. I definitely made up my mind on my vote, so thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Campbell.
Apologize for jumping the gun. I was so excited to see this letter from Sunrise in which they reiterate what certain responsible people have been trying to say for a long time. And I particularly like the last paragraph, which says, the proper governance of each agency relies on the integrity of their respective boards of commissioners and the public statements made by its members. There's at least one member, or there are two members sitting up there right now who have made public statements that are extremely inappropriate, appearing to be speaking for the board, and they do not speak for the board. Now, I know this is not a place for debate, but Patricia Holloway introduced debate into this last round. I am outraged, but not surprised, that Commissioner Holloway continues to accuse me of perjury in the 2009 election. The fact is, there's proof on the surveillance photos taken at the election.
It wasn't
Taken
2009.
at the elections office. You accused me of perjury, Pat.
Recently.
Now, take it. Well, recent. Oh, well, I'm going back to that one then. But she's repeatedly accused me of perjury in the case of the election in 2009. And she did not go back and look at the full surveillance video, which showed that at 4:29.5, Richard Rainier and I were both in the office. Richard was standing next to Cammy Keto at the counter at 4:29.5. There was no perjury. And I told her that, and she continues to say that. Now she just continues to make these statements about people. Flagrant, outrageous statements, like she has been making about Sunrise. I don't know, I have never been able to figure out what her agenda is, or why she thinks she has the right to make make statements that are lies, that distort the truth terribly about an agency like Sunrise. And regardless what Commissioner Sterling thinks he has found in the 190 agreement. Anybody who knows anything about the way boards operate, not even with, forget about the 190 agreement, any board at any time can consider transferring part of their assets to some other group. Any board at any time, regardless of that 190 agreement, which does not say it's to be done. So you are using that statement that people should realize applies to all boards at any time, and you're loading it all on the 190 agreement. It's wrong and you know it.
Chair, so
Thank you.
Thank you for your.
may I just comment, please? Having been called a liar, I want to establish that I'm not.
We've got enough response.
All right, I didn't lie about Barbara. Sorry, quit.
Cindy, you have something to say at this point?
I was going to speak, Cindy Louisville from Milwaukee, and I was going to speak on something else, Chair Soa, perhaps it'll wait for another meeting, but I felt as a member of the rate committee that I should at least respond a little to the other person who was up here, Lady Rowland, I believe her name was, especially since there was so much discussion going on. The 76% that was mentioned by one of the commissioners is not a true form from what I could see. And the amounts that it got raised, and sometimes percentages get used to beat up a process or to highlight it or to lift it up. And I would go to the real money that happened. The real money of that's less than a gallon of milk. The real money of that raise was like something, I believe it was like $3.25, something like that. I don't have the figures in front of me because I wasn't planning on talking about the raise. So it's $3.25, $45, $2.95, it was in that range. It wasn't a lot of money. We've heard today from one of our brother, sister water districts that other water districts have known that we have not been improving our infrastructure as it should have been done across back across the last several years. Part of that reason is that certain commissioners want to treat this board as a private company for profit instead of a public service entity, which it is. And once we get past that mindset here, we should be able to go on and do the proper things that need to be done to keep this entity fully functioning with properly maintained and improved infrastructure, and not worrying about where the funds for that is going on. As I stated when this was discussed earlier this year, perhaps we, as a rate committee, made an improper, not improper, but an ingallant, perhaps, request of the board when we sent to them a 28% increase. They chose to reduce that to 14% over 2 years. The reason we requested the 28% in the first year and then moved it to a 14% in the second year and reduced it over the course of the next 5 years, a 5-year pricing plan is what we presented, was to make sure that we not only sent more funds into our reserve fund, but we also had funds available to do a restructuring of certain infrastructure facilities. That that two commissioners could not read what was before them in the form of rate schedules that said exactly what the rates were going to be is a problem that we should be addressing. And hopefully, the problem will be addressed by the ratepayers, not by the ratepayers, but addressed by the electors. I realize some people are making a statement out there trying to make it sound like this election that's going on right now, is not being handled properly. There's a statement that our folks that use our services should keep in mind. We have customers who are not electors, but we have electors who are not customers. And that's the way the law sets up who elects us, elects the folks here. That they are elected by the people who live in the district. There are certain pieces of property, as Ms. Holloway knows, because she's been aware of it since 2007, have been being taken and transferred slowly, but transferred over to Oregon City for the last 5 years. We weren't really having a way to go with it in 2007, 2008, because we had some other problems that were instigated by other commissioners. But since Mr. Moore has been here, along with Mr. George and the engineering staff, that work has been steadily taken care of. And it's going to be taken care of even further. And that good work by our staff and management team does not need to be denigrated by people who don't even read the papers that are given to them before the meetings to know exactly how much money they're telling people to spend. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. David Blair, did you want to speak now?
Yes, thank you. Dave Blair, right there. First, I would like to point out that somebody has brought signs into this room advocating a position in an election. I believe that is a violation of election law, and I believe that should be removed from the building.
I volunteered to take that out. I'll gladly take that out and put it in my truck. May I have your signs, please?
I don't know if it violates election law.
Well,
I
I
believe
think
it
it,
does.
just to resolve things. May I have
But
your
anyway,
signs? I'll put them outside.
My real question here tonight is that this organization paid $27,000 to attorney Michael Nixon in December. That was brought up in the January meeting, and I asked if CRW had a contract with Mr. Nixon. Mr. Moore said, yes, we had a contract. And I asked if I could see a copy of that contract. Was it available to public document? I was told, yes, I could. I made a public records request to see that, and what was returned from Mr. Moore's assistant was a statement that that is not a CRW document. Now, either CRW has a contract with that gentleman and has a copy of it, or they don't. So could somebody ask that, and could somebody get me a copy of that contract? Did you have that?
We'll look into it. Thank you for coming. Now we're going to talk about our agenda for today. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda, or?
Move to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any amendment? Not all those in favor say aye. Oops, we lost the commission. Say aye.
You're right.
Excuse me, sir.
All those opposed say no.
No,
Pass on to the next step.
I'm going to abstain. I haven't had a chance to see the changes that were made after the agenda was delivered to us.
If we want to,
Under action items, we have an additional item. Do we have a motion?
yes, Mr. Chairman, because an appeal has been filed at the appeals court by members of this board, once again, we find ourselves having to defend. Consequently, we once again find ourselves having to get legal services from outside legal offices. So I move that CRW's General Counsel Phillips Law Office be authorized on behalf of CRW to retain the law firm of Harangue, Long, Gary Rednick, PC, to intervene on behalf of CRW with respect to any and all notices of appeal filed by Mr. James Huffman in the Court of Appeals relating to appeals from circuit court judgments entered by Judge Jones. I further move that counsel is authorized to file any documents with the Court of Appeals deemed necessary to seek intervention and to oppose the appeals or remand of such judgments. I further move that the board waive the potential legal conflicts with Clackamas County relating to unrelated employment matters, including the 2003 PERS rate order legal issues, in which the firm of Harangue, Long, Gary, Rudnick, PC represents Clackamas County, as disclosed in the firm's conflict waiver and disclosure letter dated March 14th, 2013.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, and discussion.
Yes, Ursula. I would point out, as I did the last time, that Commissioners Kalani and Humberston have an actual conflict of interest in voting on this issue. They have a pecuniary interest. They both receive the stipend that the rest of us do as board members for attending board meetings, etc. And I would also just state that until Clackamas River Water hired an attorney and filed a motion to intervene, Clackamas River Water was not involved in that litigation at all. And so it has been the choice of Chair Soa and Commissioners Humberson and Kalani to expend that money, although Clackamas County has, who was the party to the suit, has responded to that suit. So I think that money is being spent inappropriately, and I don't believe that under the Ethics Code, Commissioners Kalani and Humberston can discuss it or vote on it without committing an ethics violation.
President Sewell, just respond prior to Commissioner Holloway. I haven't received dime one from the commissioner from the CRW. When you're talking about pecuniary, I think it's peculiar that you suggest that you don't know what you're talking about.
I think perhaps it's time for Mr. Humberston.
I'll be happy to respond, Mr. Chairman. According to special districts law governed under 198.190, compensation expenses of members of certain boards, a member of the governing body of a district may receive an amount not to exceed $50 for each day or portion thereof as compensation for services performed as a member of the governing body. Since Judge Jones has ruled that we are members of the governing body and that has not been stayed, we are entitled to that compensation, and I don't have a problem voting on this issue at all, and I don't believe that it constitutes a violation. Secondly, under other meetings, for meetings other than defined in section 1.6A, a board member shall receive up to $15 an hour to a maximum of $50 for attendance per day at any other board-approved meetings or events. So, as long as we are the duly constituted members of this board, I don't see that as being a conflict of interest whatsoever. It's duly noted that you do. I'd call the question.
Mr. Sherman had his hand up.
Okay.
A simple review of the audio-visual of the Board of Clackamas County Commissioners will clearly demonstrate that Commissioner Jim Bernard stated clearly that he did not have, nor did the commission have authority to appoint anyone except for that singular commissioner, period. He further went on to elaborate that it was his intention to go ahead and appoint additional commissioners, knowing full well it's a violation of Oregon law, and he chose to continue to do so. Just that simple. The other thing is, too, also, is that their own staff people, their own legal people, in the form of a letter addressed to the general manager, stated the same thing. Repeatedly in this letter that's a public document, we do not have authority. 3 times he states that. We do not have authority. And yet he continues on to do that. Granted, we took and appointed you, Soa, and we brought you forward. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. And at that same time, memory serves me correctly, you signed an affidavit in regards to Mr. Jim Huffman's activity on the behalf of the ratepayers, even though this man has not been paid a single dime by the ratepayers to do any of the information or the work that's available, period. These 2 fellows to your right have no business here pretending to be commissioners for CRW or its ratepayers. Just that easy. We'll just have to wait for the Supreme Court. And if you take and review the information, nowhere is there a request from the CRW ratepayers to spend a dime on attorneys. They're not mentioned in any of the documents. And to take and go forward and spend their money borders on illegality. It just flies in the face of what's ethical.
Thank you. Comments or questions been called for? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I would request a roll call vote, please, Chair Sullivan.
Pardon?
A roll call vote, please.
We're going to have a request for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Holloway, how do you vote?
No.
Commissioner Hubbardston?
Aye.
Commissioner Kalani?
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling?
No.
And Commissioner Silla?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2.
The approval of the settlement agreement with Beer Train Telephone Company has been withdrawn. We'll move on to 4, the generator project addendum. Adam?
You want a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board amend the professional services agreement with Conduit Engineering for additional design services work under the Emergency Power and Electrical Upgrades Project of $59,750 for a revised not-to-exceed budget of $189,140.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Adam, you got the presentation?
I do. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present tonight on the first of 2 items. Agenda item 4 is the PSA amendment with Conduit Engineering for the generator project. And I wanted to just present a couple pictures really fast just to get context and refresh everyone's memory on what we're after here with this project. Very important capital improvement at the treatment plant, which will install a generator, emergency generator facility, and some electrical upgrades. What we have here on the first slide is kind of an example of what the generator facility will look like. Not exactly, of course, but you can see kind of the key parts, the generator enclosed in a metal enclosure, fuel tank up here, and then the parallel switch gear, which is kind of the computer, the brains of the system that ties it into the plant. This facility is Cisco in Wilsonville. It happens to be the same make and model generator as ours. And then here's a picture of our generator and storage. Just once again to refresh the board's memory on what we can do. On to agenda item 4. The generator project it has a long history, but back in 2010 and 11, we conducted a system study to basically reevaluate how we were going to install a generator in an aged plant, a water treatment plant. And at that time, Conduit Engineering did the study and identified some very key life, health, and safety requirements that were not being fulfilled by the current system, and which were recommended as improvements, both as part of the generator project and in upgrades of the existing facility. Along with those recommendations, and after the study was completed, the National Fire Protection Code, 70E, Section 70E, was revised in 2012. And what that did is brought on some additional criteria or requirements in the code for minimizing some very severe electrical hazards, arc flash, which is basically an explosive electrical hazard, short circuit, and fault type hazards that can happen on high voltage or medium voltage or even low voltage electrical equipment. So again, the whole project was identified to meet these life, health, and safety requirements, improve not only the electrical system at the plant and the load pump station, but also install this emergency generator. What I wanted to do is take a minute and review the current way that we're going about the generator project. It's a little different than the typical design build process that we go through. Back in the fall of 2011, staff came to the board and requested an exemption to normal competitive bidding to use the construction manager general contractor or CMGC process. The white graphic behind the colored ones is kind of a representation of how the CMGC process works. There are three parties: the owner, of course, being CRW, the CMGC or the general contractor, and then the architect or engineer. And each, of course, has a role and are intertied in executing the goals of the project. So the green bubbles, again, identify who those individuals are in this picture. Oregon Electric Construction was awarded through a selection process in late 2011 to be the CMGC. They contracted an engineer, PA engineering, to be part of their design team. And Clackamas River Water, prior to that, identified conduct engineering to be their familiarity with the treatment plant and electrical facilities to come on board as really CRW's electrical consultant and to be really the eyes and ears for the project from an electrical perspective, recognizing that specific electrical engineering expertise was not present with inside the district. We decided to utilize a very competent firm to assist with that. So again, just reviewing project roles and responsibilities.
And if you would, some folks that are here weren't here when the project was originally proposed. Could you tell us basically why we need a generator and who gets the excess power and all that?
Yeah, definitely. The generator project is kind of unique in the sense that it's a partnership. We purchased a generator back in 2006. Thank you. And it was purchased under, we were awarded a FEMA pre-disaster mitigation grant, and we were given funding from FEMA, where initially the generator was scoped into that overall budget. There was another component of the grant being structural upgrades to some of our facilities. 2007, the FEMA project was rescoped and came to the realization that the grant money that was awarded was not enough to really do the entire scope as scope. So what happened is the generator was basically taken out of the grant project.
Basically, why do we need a generator?
So CRW decided to keep the generator, and given the issues that could occur in a major power outage, having a generator that could essentially run the plant, keep the plant running, was seen as a very huge benefit for the district and for our customers. So basically that was kind of the background of why we retained the generator and then moved ahead with progressing with the current project. So with PGE involved, they have come alongside us in a partnership. Their dispatchable standby generator program. They actually have a number of these generators around the region. The one I showed you in the picture with Cisco is part of their program. And what it comes down to is, in return for PGE providing critical operation and maintenance and fueling of the system, of the generator, PGE is entitled to utilize any excess power that may be generated in time of emergency. The owner still gets first right of use, so if there's a power outage, the generator would first and foremost be the plant or whatever facility. So that's where PGE comes in, just mentioning that. So we do have a current agreement with PGE as well. So while we're talking about Conduct Engineering, again, they are our consultant electrical engineer on this project, working directly with CRW and the CMGC contractor and their engineer. With the project, a number of design challenges came along. I mentioned the first one, but really is kind of the primary one, being the change in the NFPA, where arc flash safety and general electrical safety really kind of started coming to the fore in the last year or two. And really, the interesting part of that is that it's also a change in the industry mindset or the industry standard. The NFPA is way ahead, and I say way, probably 5 to 10 years ahead of where most electrical contractors are in their standard, in their mindset. So what we're doing is, as the code is becoming more prevalent and states and nationally is being adopted, we're designing for those future, the code today. So not only is the code changing, but a couple of things we've done in the last year of design, coordinating operational requirements with the contractor. What that means is that we're going out, gathering field data, filling in gaps where with the treatment plant where we have a lot of pumps, we have a lot of motors, we have a lot of, we have the PLC, which basically is the brains of the plant and communicates with the tanks and the filters and the low lift pumps and our whole system. All that needs to be upgraded as we upgrade the kind of the guts of the electrical system at the plant. So with the changing code and with what that's doing in the industry, our engineer is needing more time to work with the contractor to affect those changes and progress in the design. So,
Just another interruption.
Sure.
The generator will be run by diesel. The fuel tank that we're putting in will run the generator for how long?
that's a good question. At full load, the generator does use diesel and it burns about 130 gallons an hour. So with a 5,000 gallon fuel tank, which is what we're proposing, that'll roughly be about a day or so of operation. I say or so because we don't calculate it based on full load. That would be all the systems going full bore at the plant, which we know that, even though our firm capacity is around 24 MGD, the likelihood of that happening at any time of a theoretical power outage is pretty slim. So we kind of extend.
Do we anticipate if there's some kind of a major accident or something that we'll be able to get enough diesel to charge that tank for long enough to keep us pumping water?
Yes, that's interesting that you bring that up. One of the advantages of being partnered with PGE in this project is that they will be responsible for the refueling of the generator. And since it's going to be connected to their grid, keeping fuel in that generator is going to be a priority for them. So we're having discussion right now with PGE on if there needs to be an additional agreement of some form or something that will basically allow for a refueling scheme beyond just kind of word of mouth, or right now we're kind of verbally discussing it. So.
I didn't bring mine with me this evening, Adam, but the original document that answers the questions that you're putting forth this evening in regards to the liabilities that we've talked about in the past and the whole document itself with Cardiff and PGE. Did you ever get that on a PDF file by chance?
I think he's referring to the generator system study.
Yes,
kind of
right.
Completed.
It was the #1 document, the first
Correct.
one that got things started. It answered a tremendous amount of questions.
Correct.
The reason I bring it up, Adam, is that if you have that available on our CRW website under the district engineering, that way then, whether the public wants to see it or whether people, whoever wants to see it, they can go into it and then see the format and the methodology that you've used over, how many years have you been with us? 5 years, 6 years?
Not quite 5 years.
5 years, that you've used to develop it so that these answers, can be forthcoming. Good presentation. Just, and lastly, how many years have we had the generator sitting in the building over there?
Since 06.
Since 06?
7,
And how many
7.
total were there in the beginning?
Originally, 2 generators were ordered, and one of the generators was damaged in transit. Turned out to be a good thing for the district because as we reevaluated in the recent past, we identified that we really only needed 1 generator at the plant.
And lastly, one of the important issues that was in the report that you put forth is that there's an extreme safety issue to our personnel in regards to the switches automatically tripping themselves over there in the plant?
If I can comment. The report does identify a number of areas where there are, basically due to aged equipment, obsolete equipment where replacement parts are hard to find or possible to find. I will say though that for an almost 50-year-old plant, the maintenance and upkeep of that plant has been exemplary. It's been really, there have been some electrical upgrades that have been done over the course of the last 50 years. But because of the mix of technology, you know, and again, the age, most electrical equipment like this, a 20-year life is pushing it. So
That's probably because Mr. Cummins tells people to stay out of his plant.
that's, I know Rob does a great job back there and his staff, so.
Thank you, Adam.
So moving on to the amendment, just tracing the path of where we've been with Conduit. The original contract was for $93,000. That was amended initially by $36,000 roughly to really get them on board with the CMGC process and get them working with more of an active role that we set out for them, kind of shifted the scope a bit to get them working more closely with the CMGC. And that was right at the time the CMGC was being awarded. So the current amendment really, and I did attach the exhibit A in the agenda write-up, which has kind of its proposal, has cost breakdown in there and itemizes the kind of the key items in there by time and materials. It is a time and materials agreement, so they are paid for what they do and more. That totals just under $60,000. So the total then contract with Conduit Engineering would be the $189,140.
Mr. Holloway.
You know, Adam, all of my questions relating to this really were around budget. And do I understand you to say that even with the increase, or the amendment number 3, that you're asking for us now, it still looks like we're going to come in under budget on that?
That's correct. And I did want to represent that, that our budget number, the $386,000, that was an all-inclusive number for engineering in general, whether it was kind of engineering or whether it was the CMG, the contractor's engineering component. But yeah, the number as it stands today with this amendment, we're still within budget, and we foresee that for the construction services phase, we'll recommend it kind of as an active role in that as well, instead of, again, oversight. There's plenty of funding left for that completion.
And I'd like to compliment the engineering department on presenting the board with full information, with a budget in advance, with information that allows us to track along with the budget. It makes managing the project.
Thank you for your comments as you go through the chair. Thank you for your comments.
You can take this.
Anyone from the public wish to comment on this issue? Seeing none, we're ready for a vote.
Yes.
All right, all those in favor of this amendment, addendum, that's all. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll say aye, but who read the motion initially? You did? Okay, fine. Just, there's been a bit of a time delay. I wanted to make sure we have the motion in here. Thank you. Yes, aye.
And now we'll go on to action item number 5. This is the contract amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve early work amendment number 2 to the CM/GC contract with Oregon Electric Construction Incorporated to add $329,840 to the contract for the purposes of conducting early work construction activities for the emergency power and electrical upgrades project.
Second.
Motion been made and second. Any comments? Adam, you want to?
I do, thank you. And again, I'll try to keep this one a little shorter. Agenda item number 5 has to do with our construction contract with Oregon Electric, or CMGC contract, I should say. And of the two, I'm excited about both of these items, but this one is very exciting because it means breaking ground if it was to be approved, if it is approved. What this item does is start some early site work in preparation of installing the generator and related equipment later in the year. We're all pretty much familiar with the project and goals. Oregon Electric, again, is our construction manager, general contractor, and their contract includes the potential for early work provision. This early work amendment. Right now, they're in a pre-construction phase or a design phase, but what this amendment allows is for early work, early site work of some shape or form to be conducted prior to negotiating the guaranteed maximum price with the contractor. The GMP is typically negotiated prior to moving into the construction phase. We're having those discussions with the contractor right now. But the big benefit of this early work amendment would be first recognizing that we have some lag time that we're dealing with in this project. And the reason for that is that the key equipment, the switch gear, the main electrical equipment that comes from Caterpillar back in Georgia, is a 2 to 6 month lead time, depending on what equipment it is. So in order to utilize some of that lag and not just wait, we're recommending this early work amendment to start some of the site work out there, based, of course, on approved designs. Early work amendment number 1 was approved to allow for submittal approval of the long lead equipment that it is talked about. And basically got the ball rolling for Caterpillar and Oregon Electric to start the designs and the fabrication of the equipment. And then this early work amendment, again, will authorize work, including what I've listed there, and we got a more complete list in your write-up. But permitting, clearing layout, excavation and backfill for vaults, electrical conduit, the large slab that the generator will rest on, and other site improvements. This is a rough site plan, and forgive my highlighting. I didn't have intent on using a sketch, but it's kind of short. I think it's representative enough. Here's the treatment plant kind of in this corner, upper left, and the clear well that's underground is just above here. The yard area where the generator will go is kind of the center of the screen. The proposed generator and switchgear and fuel tank will all rest on a concrete pad, a large rectangular pad or slab. And then there will be some other improvements made, like sidewalk, a vault area for the new electrical service that will come in from the pole down here. There will be trenching done to not only install electrical wiring in the yard area here, but also run that down to the low lift pump station down below at the river. So all this work in advance of official construction, but again, based on approved designs. And then the good news is, once we get into construction and we have a negotiated guaranteed maximum price, any early work becomes part of the GMP. It's not in addition to the GMP. So this would be added into that total price that is finally negotiated for the construction phase, even though it's being done before. What I show here is kind of where we stand right now with the CMGC, with Oregon Electric. Their original contract was about $72,000, primarily for the design pre-construction phase. And then we did an early work amendment for about $41,000 for, again, the pre-submittal for the long lead items. And then this early work amendment would be for that site work, and it's itemized quite a bit in your handout. Exhibit A again, I think. And that's just under $330,000 for that work. We evaluated all of the costs, and with our engineer, with Huntington Engineering, and we agreed that the costs are reasonable. They're within scope of our original budget, going all the way back to the study, and we itemized to some detail the type of work, the site work, the conduit, the main components. So.
Mr. Sterling?
Adam, does this affect their bonding or proof of bonding at all that they have put forth in regards to their ability to do the work? Or does it accelerate the declaration of bonding in regard to their performance to begin the work early?
They will be required to provide a separate bond for this early work.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
for the amount shown.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Anyone from the public who wish to comment? Seeing none, we'll have a vote. All those in favor of this amendment, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Say no. Action item number 6,
Thank you.
JTA Sunrise Quarter Professional Service Agreement Amendment.
So may I ask Adam one question before he gets up from the table, please, if you would?
Okay.
In previous meetings, Adam, management has directed your capacity to survey in regards to the Beaver Creek Telephone Company. You're not a surveyor, are you?
If I may, no, I'm not a surveyor. I'm a licensed professional engineer.
Right. And it would be inappropriate for management to ask you to put forth stated facts or information in regards to your belief as to what the correct survey should be of the property at Beaver Creek Telephone? Am I right or wrong?
In my capacity as a professional engineer, I would have knowledge of, based on my experience, of what an official survey looks like. And I did provide that information upon request from management at one point.
Thank you.
Do we have the motion?
Okay. I move that the board approves amendment number 3 to the professional services agreement with OPEC for engineering, management, and inspection services work under JTA Sunrise Quarter CRW Waterline Relocation Project, PSA, by $83,251 for a revised not to exceed budget of $221,617.
Second.
Motion made second. George, you want to have a presentation?
Thank you very much. I'm going to slide to the next page. On the right that I've given you, there's the history, very repetitive, most of you have seen it before, and where we're at with the highway work known as the Sunrise Quarter. So I'll pass over the items completed that's written up. Basically, we are now in the bidding process, ODOT is. And prior to that, as I pointed out here, I have amendment number 3 for a professional service agreement with ODOT, who did our water line design. They are also doing the design for ODOT on the highway. The reason we chose ODOT was that coordination issue, saved us a fair amount of dollars drafting and design issues. So basically, the professional services is the additional scope of work. I'm asking them to assist staff during the construction phase of the waterline work through JPA that will help for construction through management and inspection services, which includes review of partial payments, coordination of ODOT rules and regulations so we build these things correctly, help us oversee inspection. We will, with our staff, do full-time inspection. We will have our design engineers available for field inspection when appropriate. They will review all submittals of equipment, and they will prepare the final as-built. This contract, this amendment, is scheduled to be a 3-year construction period. And right now, ODOT has the bid opening date as of March 28, 2013. And my belief is somewhere in April of this year, they will start construction. I don't know if you've been out on lawn field, but starting about a week ago, they started deconstructing some of the buildings out there in the right-of-ways, or future right-of-ways. So they are beginning the work. It is a project. I started wondering there for a while because it's been about 3 years we've been working on this, not counting all the white papers previously. Just a quick summary of where we're at on the fees with OPAC, the original service agreement was $182,706. That was back in May, I believe, of 2012. As we were getting into the design, we discovered that several areas, major areas, was not required for any redesign or relocation of our water lines. So OVAC and staff, and CRW staff, we reworked the scope of work, reduced the dollar amount by $44,240. So the current budget with OVAC is $138,366. And that contract is, that amount is scheduled to be finalized out at the end of March, and we will be under budget on that. I don't have final bills, of course, but we will be under that. The next piece of work is, of course, as I spoke of, would be the increase of scope of work for the engineering management. That scope of work is $83,251 for a total professional service agreement at $221,617. And that is the time and materials. If they do not do the work, it will be less, just like the design service contract. Work was not required, it did not go for. And we monitor pretty quick, or pretty close. So, that's pretty quick, pretty simple.
Thank you.
Chair
Howard.
I've seen newspaper articles about potential lawsuits and delays and things of that sort. Do you anticipate that all of this funding is in fact going to be spent in this fiscal year before the end of June?
The engineering management services will be over a 3-year period. The construction period is 3 years. And so as I budget in the budget, CIP budget, you'll see probably the full amount budgeted, or I will pick a piece as we present it to the budget committee and all. You'll see I will spread it out over a few years, so it won't impact all the 1 year's CIP program. That's the question.
Yeah, that was the focus of my question, whether we already have funding in the budget that will cover what we're going to be spending this year.
As a matter of fact, for the 12-13 year, we are funded for construction and design. We will not use all those. Of course, those dollars will go back to the fund and be reallocated next budget year.
Mr. Sterling.
George, where on earth was there going to be a fishway design added onto the program? I didn't know there was any navigable streams in this area that
to keep it real simple, there was a ditch over by the railroad tracks.
Oh, it did.
Truly. And the only reason I left the amendment number 2, there was enough documentation that came through both Oregon Fish and Wildlife, ODOT, and CIW that if I was ever audited, I wanted to make sure the documentation was in place. What happened was they pulled the work after we worked on it for about 3 weeks, trying to figure out how they were going to get fish over one of our water lines. We have a 24-inch water line that was potentially going to be impacted. Very expensive. It became $0, no time, no scope, but I still have the documentation in place.
That brings back to memory when they stopped work on the 205 overpass there on the east side, when they said there was a navigable stream and needed a conduit or something in the years past. And I thought, what are they talking about? Thank you, George.
Any more comments?
Mr. Brinkley knows with all 3 of these projects that engineering has come in, remains under budget very well, and I just wanted to acknowledge that and compliment you on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do remember, and the board was very accommodating to me when I came to the budget originally, with a little scope of work, very little understanding what we were going to have to do, and you did give me a pianist budget for the PSA, and so we were watching it very closely, and we were able to reduce it. And I do appreciate your understanding, because that was a difficult decision to make.
Any member of the public wish to comment? Seeing none.
Lastly, so one last thing, an important issue that you might also bring up again for those that perhaps forgot, the reason we stay with OBEC in ODOT, rather than going out and getting additional bids and that sort of stuff, very sound financial reasoning. Maybe some of the people don't understand that.
Basically, OBEC being the design engineer for ODOT has the clear understanding and all the records, and all the design, all the AutoCAD drawings of the highway design. We supplied all the information on water lines, and by being able to use their expertise, we saved I believe, a substantial amount of money on time and energy by not having another engineering group having to relearn, regroup, and redraw the drawings.
Thank you, George. It's very important that that's reminded to the people in attendance this evening.
We're now ready for a vote on the JTA Sunrise Corps Special Service Agreement Amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
Thank you.
We're ready for resolution number 09-213. Do you have a motion?
I move that the board approve resolution 09-2013, authorizing appropriation transfer within the general fund for fiscal year 2012-13.
Second.
You'll have the presentation now. Carol.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the board. I'm the CFO of Clackamas River Water. First of all, I'd like to give just a little definition of why we're here asking for a budget adjustment. Why isn't this a supplemental budget? And per Oregon budget law, the transfer within the same fund for dollars is okay to be approved by the board via resolution. So that's why we're doing it that way. Additionally, what I'm asking for is funds from the contingency balance. We had $500,000 appropriated as contingency. Contingency cannot be spent until it's moved to a spendable category. In the case this evening, I'm asking for some $90,000 to be moved to materials and services, and an additional $60,000 for our capital outlay. Those are two of the spendable categories. There is a limit on how much contingency you can use, but our contingency dollars in total are less than the limit that we would be allowed to move. So the reason I'm here this evening is we have experienced some unanticipated events since we worked on the budget last spring. We have had multiple significant breaks at Redland Road. We have a special election coming up that COW is responsible for the total cost of. We have some legal costs due to responding to filings to the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. We had a wholesale rate increase for the purchases from the South Fork Water Board. And this year we have had several large meter failures, and those meter failures, that is a direct tie to revenue that we produce. So for Redland Road, I've gathered up some money, the total cost that we've spent. We had a break in October and then 2 breaks in January. The direct external cost, not counting internal labor or internal equipment use, has been about $34,000. I'm actually not asking for any money transferred for this particular cost, because frankly, that's one of the things that we do, is we fix our pipes when they break. So we anticipate that we can absorb this within the budget that we were given. The second item is the special election. We're not exactly sure what the total cost will be, but Clackamas County will let us know, and we have been given an estimate of about $17,000. So we are asking for a transfer of $17,000 to cover that. The third event that occurred was the change in our insurance policy holder coverage. We know that the increase was greater than $26,000, but what I'm trying to display here is, because it's on a calendar year rather than a fiscal year, the entire increase doesn't impact us this year. We leave part of those dollars in a prepaid account at the end of the year, and we will be taking that into consideration when we budget for the upcoming year. So you can see the SDAO amounts in the first two columns on the top. The amount to Philadelphia is also split into two. So if you're looking at that middle box, that's where we see the difference that will impact this budget year. And additionally, we don't know what the cost will be for legal representation at the Supreme Court and at the Court of Appeals. We have estimated costs of somewhere between $15,000 and $50,000. If it exceeds the $17,000 that I'm requesting, we are hopeful that we can utilize some of the money that is in legal for boundary protection that we haven't used this year to date. We also had, we negotiated with South Fork Water Board. We had a rate increase from 74 cents per CCF to 89. To remind the board, their original proposal to us was 104.9, so we were able to cut that back. The purchase volumes are coming in a little bit below what we budgeted, so we don't need the full amount, and we will absorb a portion of the rate increase in other budget line items. So we're asking for $30,000 for water purchases. So all of those were the materials and services. If anybody has any questions now, we can talk about materials and services separately and then talk about the capital outlay. It's up to you, Chair Sell.
Thank you, Commissioner Holloway.
Yes, Carol, going back to the insurance budget, you're showing on your chart, fiscal year 2013, $93,750. And in the quarterly document that you provide to us, our budget for insurance is actually $187,000.
Yes, ma'am. If you look at the fiscal 13, I have it broken into two columns, July through December and then January through June. So the 91,030, or the budget, the 93,750 and the 93,750. So that equals the budget, that dollar amount.
Okay, and so you're saying that we're, before the end of this fiscal year, we're going to, in the end of December, we had 96,000 balance. We're going to expend more than that between now and the end of the fiscal year?
Yes, we have to pay 1/2 of the bill from Philadelphia. We have not paid it yet. They bill differently than SDAO. SDAO sent us a bill for the whole year and we paid it in January. Philadelphia asked for the first quarter, 3 months worth of payment initially, and then we pay them monthly. So the dollar amount based on, because they have provided us with how much the total bill will be, is that $120,788 for this fiscal year to cover us from January through June 30th.
I think it's 6 or 9 months, Commissioner Holloway, that we pay them on the payment line.
We wrote a check, I think, in December to them.
Yes, we did.
And did that include this amount that you're asking for? Was it in anticipation of?
We paid for January, February, March. That was the check that we wrote to them in December when we procured the insurance. We have since been billed for April, and we anticipate getting a bill for May and for June. So the total cost that we'll be paying to Philadelphia is, this year, is $120,788. If we pay any more, it'll be prepaid, effective for July activity.
Okay, and relative to the water purchases, our budget was $558,100. As of the end of December, we'd spent $317,220, which leaves a balance of $240,880. Now I know the rate has gone up, but we have already been through all the high water use period. So, you think that we're going to, it's going to be more than $240,880 between now and July 1?
The water purchases is not just for the payment to South Fork, and so we did our estimates based on consumption last year and the new rate. And again, the increase is estimated at $94,000. I'm asking for a $30,000 transfer from contingency to cover that. The rest of the dollars will be covered from other budget line items.
And what else goes into it? Into that 558,000 number?
We have payments that we make to Oak Lodge and to NCCWC for the customers that are served by their water, but that are, that receive bills from us. And there, I don't have the list in front of me, but there are other things. It's not a single line item. This is what we pay to South Fork Water Board.
And those are pretty minor. And let's see. Yeah, on the legal fees, our budget was 179,000, and you still had at the end of December 106,959. Now I know that a portion of the board voted to pay Mr. Phillips 96,000 a year, regardless of the service he provides, plus additional money. So for anything outside, which is somewhere outside. So what I'm understanding is that then this amount, everything that you're asking for is bumping this 179,000 up. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any more questions? Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Cindy? Come forward.
Mr. Sal, I just wanted to give the board, not the board, but the audience a figure, and the figure that I came up with seemed to be not clear to me, so it came up with 55 cents per ratepayer, but maybe that is true. I'm doing it again. It is. So I just wanted to let them know that the special election is costing each ratepayer in the district 55 cents.
Mr. Chairman?
Sorry.
Before we move on, I just had one minor correction. What we did in going with retainer was $8,000 a month to be reviewed at the end of this fiscal year. That would be $96,000 a year if we go for a full year. We have not yet decided to do that. That point should be made. Also, that if you look at previous year's costs for legal, by doing this, with a reasonable assumption that we're going to continue to have legal costs, we should save in that 6-month period of time. And I don't have all my notes with me, but it was either $30,000 or $60,000 during that period of time as a result of going with a retainer. So while $96,000 a year is a lot of money for an attorney, the reality is we're looking at approximately $48,000 at this point until we review it at the end of the 6 months. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I would just point out that all of the work that Mr. Phillips, et cetera, are doing outside of that retainer. The Beaver Creek work, which is already close to, it's at least 150,000, probably close to 200,000 by now. The litigation that you all authorized, and almost everything that's going on, other than ordinary day-to-day engineering type work, including employment law, et cetera, is all on top of. So I frankly do not understand how you expect that to be implemented.
Time will tell. Of course, we could save a great deal of money if the lawsuits were not filed and were withdrawn, and that would solve a great deal of money. But obviously, that doesn't seem to be an option, so we'll move on.
Just one correction. At this point, Mr. Phillips is not working on the Beaver Creek telephone. The reason the agreement is not here and ready to vote on is because their attorneys are taking over the process now. So we won't have additional legal costs for that.
So are you telling me that Miller Nash is not doing any work on our behalf on that agreement? It's all being done by Beaver Creek?
I have our executive.
Which is Stoll Reeves?
Mr. Chair, right now, what we did, we staff and our council sat down with Beaver Creek, and what we requested that they do through their council is to have them draw up the agreement for us to respond to, so that those costs were not being incurred by CRW.
And Chair, so I presume that means when it comes back, that our legal counsel will be paying some attention to it? That our legal counsel will be reviewing it? We're not just going to take what Beaver Creek hands us?
Mr. Chair, that is correct. Our legal counsel actually is in the process of reviewing it now.
So we do have more legal work going on it. That was all I wanted to establish.
As it relates to reviewing the proposed agreement.
Okay, so now I'd like to continue on with the capital outlay costs. And again, I'm asking for money to come from the contingency to capital outlay. We proposed a very small budget for capital outlay this year of $93,000. So far, we have either spent or is committed to spend about $43,000. But of that money that we've spent, we've got $25,000 that was spent and not budgeted. And part of that was $17,000 for budget or for pump repair. And then we've got some other large meter costs, the failures of the large meters that we spent $22,000 and we had only $15,000 budgeted. So here's our anticipated needs between now and June 30th. We think that we will be doing some work on some pump station roofs that need to have some repairs. The filter coal replacement at the plant, we had originally budgeted $8,000 for that, but that cost has gone up a little bit. We anticipate spending $10,000. We have yet another pump that needs some work, that's approximately $5,000. The large meters and bulks, these are the commercial meters that feed some of our larger water use customers, is estimated to be around $60,000 in addition to what was budgeted. And painting of the admin building is about $78,000. So we anticipate spending $58,000 greater than the $92,000 that was budgeted. So I'm asking for $60,000 just to make sure we've got a little bit of leeway. The interesting thing to me is on these, the large meters. Every year, we budget money for large meter repair or replacement, and every year we test the meters. And as long as they are within an acceptable range, we don't have to do anything. So if you look at the 2010, 2011, and 2012, you can see that we had pretty healthy budgets for those large meters and or bulbs, and we spent very little money. This year, we've got 5 meters that are not operating within those acceptable ranges. So all of the money that we thought we were going to spend before, and this just demonstrates that we don't spend it until we need it. So as long as the meter is working appropriately, we don't replace it. But as soon as it's not, it does have an impact on our revenue.
So we unexpectedly are spending $60,000 to pay the admin bill?
The admin building was not $60,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was $17,000, and that was in the budget. That was, I went through the capital outlay budget, looked at the items that were included in the budget, and there may be some items in there that we are not going to do this year, but that is one item that we would like to do.
She just misspoke. I heard the same thing you did, and I thought to myself, that's not what
Yeah, I
it was
made
here.
a note when you said it.
She just misspoke.
Okay, that's fine, I feel better.
President Early.
You know, George, I'm sorry that I'm going to vote no on it. It's completely irresponsible for your needs to have been placed in this motion. The needs of the infrastructure and the development and repairs that you and Mr. Cummins need should have been placed in a separate motion. These other issues of personality and conflict should never have been placed in this motion to forward money to you, George. I mean, it just isn't. I wanted you to know that. I wanted the ratepayers to know that in advance, that this is a political game being played against you and Adam. Thank you so much.
We're now ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
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 Move on to section item number 8, which is your rules and regulations.
The subject matter is
Before you start, we'll have a motion if there is one.
Move that the board approve an exemption to CRW's Rules and Regulations, Section 17, Paragraph A and C, exempting the requirement that all water lines are not less than 8 inches in diameter and all main extensions shall cross the total frontage of the property serviced for tax lot 22E24B 006000.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Now go ahead.
I just noticed an error in the tax lot number that you just spoke. It is 00600, only 2 zeros, just for clarification. These tax lot numbers are kind of important when we're talking about these properties and who they belong to and whatnot.
Strike a 0.
Thank you very much. Mr. Steve Long approached us here several weeks ago. He is in the process and has just completed the purchase of that lot. He came to us to find out how he could receive service. Well, unfortunately, this lot is very remote and a fair distance from our existing water systems. On the map that is provided in there in your packet, I show a line that is in red, and but I did not show the full extent of what would be required if these exemptions are not required. Basically, the rules say you're to extend the main across the total frontage. In this case, I've done 2,300 feet of 8-inch water line for 2 homes. Now, Mr. Long said that's not affordable for him, and I understand that we run into a lot of these on the outskirts of the district. These are very large lots, potentially very large homes, but the water lines are not there, somebody has to pay for them, and development pays for development for our rules. So of course he asked if there was another option. We do look at exemptions. Can we go to